You did not stop here by accident. And if, in this very moment, you feel your heart slow down just a little, as if something familiar has gently touched you from within, trust that this feeling is not random at all. There are moments in life when we do not need more information. We do not need long explanations. We only need a quiet pause, long enough to realize that we are standing in front of a door that has been waiting a very long time to be opened. For Libra, that moment is here now. Over the past stretch of your journey, the road has not been gentle. There were days when you wondered why everything felt stuck, even though you were doing your best to keep everything in balance. You listened, you compromised, you adjusted yourself so nothing would fall apart. You believed that if you stayed patient long enough, if you stayed kind enough, life would eventually respond. But there were very late nights when there was no one left to keep the peace with, and you quietly began to question yourself. Not because you were weak, but because you were tired. Tired of being strong in silence. Tired of understanding everyone else more than you understood yourself. If you ever thought that season was a delay, an injustice, a part of life where you were somehow stuck, then today, allow yourself to see it through a different light. What Libra has lived through was not a punishment. It was preparation. Quiet, unseen, but absolutely necessary. Like the way the ground must endure the cold long enough for spring to take root. Like the way darkness does not exist to hide the light, but to make the light unmistakable when it finally appears. Some things can only be formed when a person goes deep within themselves, and you went very deep. You learned how to read emotions through silence alone. You learned how to stand steady in the middle of conflict without losing your compassion. You learned how to exist in this world without letting its harshness harden your heart. Those lessons were not easy, but they are shaping a very different Libra now. A Libra refined enough to sense change even before it takes form. You may not be able to name what is coming yet, but you can feel it. In ordinary moments, when morning light moves across your window, when a passing sentence lands exactly where it needs to, when you realize you are no longer afraid of the old questions. These are signs that a turning point has been marked, not to pull you back into the past, but to gather everything you have lived, everything you have endured, everything you chose to believe in, and place it exactly where it belongs. Libra does not step into this chapter empty-handed. You carry experience, you carry understanding, you carry a heart that has learned how to love without disappearing in the process. And that is why what is about to open is no longer coincidence. It is the natural result of a journey long enough to change you. When you have stood in the shade long enough, you learn how to honor the light. When you have balanced the weight of the world for so long, you learn what it truly means to stand firmly on your own 2 feet. Let this moment settle inside you for a while. There is no need to understand everything yet. No need to act immediately. Just know this: you are more ready than you think. And when the movement begins, it will not be loud. It will be gentle, very gentle, like the way a stream quietly changes its direction, carrying you toward a place your soul recognized long before your mind ever did. And in that almost invisible moment of turning, you begin to realize a truth both simple and profound. That some chapters in life do not end with a loud sound, but close with a long breath, finally released after years of being held in. Libra has lived through a season like that, not through resistance, but through endurance, not through raised voices, but through holding everything together so nothing would break. You became used to listening before being heard, adjusting yourself before being understood. At times, you wondered if you were asking for too much, if wanting care, fairness, and the freedom to be yourself was somehow selfish. And so, you stepped back. Then one step more, until stepping back became a habit, and endurance was given a beautiful name called harmony. But the truth is, no real balance is built when one side is always silent. No true peace exists when a heart must constantly compress itself just to keep everything intact. Those years taught you so much. They taught you how to read what was never said, how to stand in the middle of conflict without turning yourself into the battlefield. But they also took something from you. They took the innocence of asking for what you need. They took the feeling of being a priority in your own life. And then, very quietly, there came a moment when you realized you no longer had the strength to continue the same way. Not because you had become weaker, but because you had grown strong in a different way. Strong enough to stop proving your worth through unconditional sacrifice. Strong enough to understand that being accepted by trading away yourself was never a fair agreement. You may not have said it out loud, but inside, a door had already closed. The cycle of enduring in order to be loved, to be acknowledged, to be allowed to stay, had completed its purpose. From that moment on, things began to change in very subtle ways. Your thoughts became clearer. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because you stopped making it harder on yourself. Your intuition sharpened, no longer distorted by the fear of disappointing others or the need to please everyone. You began to feel a gentle but undeniable pull, like a quiet whisper, reminding you that the time had come. Not a time to fight, not a time to explain, but a time to walk forward with full self-respect. The days ahead may bring moments when you see everything differently. Things that once held you back no longer carry the same weight. Words that once silenced you now pass through and fade away. And in this change, you do not lose your natural softness. You simply stop placing it where it does not belong. When the energy begins to move, it does not pull you away from who you were. It brings you back to the most honest version of yourself. The version of you that understands real balance always begins from within, and that some doors only open when you have the courage to stop standing in front of doors that closed a long time ago. When that realization settles in, a strange feeling appears. Delicate, yet unmistakably clear, as if something inside you is being quietly cleared out. No noise, no drama, just old layers silently falling away. You begin to see that not everything familiar is meant to remain. Some relationships have already completed their purpose. Some situations helped you grow, but were never meant to be permanent homes. And some ways of living, old reflexes, old beliefs you carried for too long, now feel too tight, too small. This change may not arrive the way you once imagined. It does not have to come as a major event or a shocking decision. Sometimes, it is simply the feeling that you no longer want to explain yourself, no longer want to hold on, no longer want to convince yourself that everything will be fine if you just try a little harder. There are mornings when you wake up and realize you are no longer on the same frequency as things that once mattered deeply. And in that moment, you are not as sad as you expected. There is only a gentle emptiness, like a room that has just been cleared of old furniture. Nothing has been rearranged yet, but the air suddenly feels much easier to breathe. If something breaks, remember this. It does not come to harm you. It comes to loosen the structures that kept you in place for far too long, the molds you had to shrink yourself to fit into, the silent agreements you signed with your own silence. When those structures begin to shake, the first feeling is often uncertainty. You may feel as though you are standing in open space, no familiar support behind you, no clear destination ahead, but that space is exactly what is needed. It is room to breathe. A pause where you can finally hear your inner voice, the one that was drowned out for so long by obligations and expectations that were never truly yours. In days like these, allow yourself to slow down, not to escape, but to feel. Beneath that thin layer of fear, you will find relief already waiting. Relief from no longer maintaining what has lost its life. Relief from no longer explaining why you have changed. Inner freedom does not arrive as celebration. It arrives as a deep quiet, where you no longer have to brace yourself to prove that you are okay. And then, in that stillness, something beautiful begins to happen. You realize you are still gentle, but no longer easily pulled off center. You still know how to love, but no longer at your own expense. You still seek harmony, but no longer sacrifice your truth to achieve it. What leaves has fulfilled its role. What remains is your true essence, lighter, clearer, and far more grounded. As the old layers fall away, you begin to walk with a new feeling, as if the ground beneath you has finally leveled out. And within that restored stability, another current is quietly forming. A current that feels real, grounded, and deeply human, touching the very values you have been waiting for a long time. a place where a sense of safety no longer lives only inside your heart, but slowly takes shape in the way you live, the way you exchange energy with the world, and the way life begins to respond to you. There are mornings when you realize you no longer flinch at numbers. You no longer avoid conversations about money as if they carry some heavy emotional weight. Not because everything suddenly feels abundant, but because your relationship with enough has changed. You no longer see money as a test of your worth. You begin to see it as a form of energy that deserves to be treated with fairness, clarity, and respect. Libra has walked through years of carefully measuring every expense, every choice, every act of giving. You tried to keep everything balanced for so long that you forgot you also deserved a place of safety. There were moments when you gave more than was necessary, accepted less than you deserved, just so no one else would feel uncomfortable. But life does not move forward on quiet sacrifice forever. It requires transparency. It requires honesty with yourself. And when you begin to set boundaries that are gentle but clear, the financial current slowly adjusts as well. This restoration does not arrive like a loud miracle. It comes through ordinary signs, a sum of money appearing right when you need to exhale, an opportunity opening that lets you feel your value is finally being seen, a steadier rhythm of life where you no longer stay up late running worst-case scenarios through your mind. Each small moment adds up to a feeling you have missed for a very long time, the feeling of being supported by life itself. You begin to understand that what arrives now is not random luck. It is the result of every effort you made when no one was watching, every time you chose integrity without immediate recognition, every moment you stayed true, kept your word, and held on to kindness even when it brought no instant reward. Life has a very long memory, and it is quietly returning a sense of fairness in its own time. At the same time, an old belief begins to dissolve like morning mist. The belief that you do not deserve abundance, that safety is meant for others, that to receive, you must first endure. As that belief fades, you do not need to convince yourself of anything. You simply allow yourself to receive a better offer, to receive help without guilt, to receive rewards for your effort without immediately diminishing your own value. Money is no longer a mental burden, no longer a source of tension whenever you think about the future. It becomes a foundation that allows you to slow down, to choose more carefully, and to invest in what truly nourishes you. You notice yourself spending with awareness, not out of fear of lack, but out of clarity about what you are building. A life with structure, with rhythm, with space for genuine joy. As this sense of safety spreads through your daily life, it reaches very private places inside you. You begin speaking to the world with a different tone, less defensive, less suspicious. You no longer need to brace yourself to prove that you are okay. That stability softens old wounds, allowing your heart to rest for a moment after years of having to manage everything alone. In that quiet space, you start to feel your own heartbeat more clearly when standing in front of others. Connections no longer revolve around who gives more or who yields more. They begin to center on being seen, being valued, and walking alongside one another. When the foundation beneath you is solid, you no longer seek comfort to fill what is missing. You open your heart to share what is already whole, and very naturally, within that newly restored sense of abundance, another door quietly opens. Not rushed, not loud, just enough for light to slip through and remind you that there are connections waiting to be approached with a heart that feels lighter and more ready than ever before. That light is not blinding. It does not overwhelm you. It is soft, warm. It carries a familiar feeling, like the scent of an old memory suddenly returning on a calm afternoon. You may not be able to name what is arriving just yet, but your heart recognizes the movement with absolute clarity. And then one day, very ordinary, a familiar name surfaces in your thoughts. Not with the same pain as before, no longer with blame or lingering regret. Just a quiet heaviness, like looking back at a road you once walked a long time ago. That person may return through a brief message, an unexpected call, or a meeting that seems accidental. No drama, no climax. Only a presence clear enough to let you know this is not coincidence. they carry with them what was once left unfinished. Words that were never spoken. Truths that were hidden out of fear of hurting you or from not having the courage to face them at the time. They may no longer look the way you remember. Time may have softened their edges, leaving a different kind of maturity in their eyes. And strangely enough, you are no longer standing where you once were either. You listen not to hold on and not to decide who was right or wrong. You listen with a heart that no longer needs to prove anything. That moment is important, even if it appears gentle on the surface, because this is not a story about returning or walking away. It is a moment where truth is placed on the table, without avoidance, where misunderstandings are called by their real names, where old wounds, if they still ache, are acknowledged with honesty instead of being covered by silence. And in that honest facing, you do not lose yourself. You do not shrink. You do not need to be overly strong. You simply remain there, present, clear-minded, calm enough to know what belongs to you and what no longer does. That conversation may close a door, or it may open a new path, very different from anything before. But whatever the outcome, you walk away with a deep sense of clarity. You are no longer trapped in the old cycle. The past no longer holds authority over the present. You have learned how to stay with your emotions without being pulled under, how to give others space to speak their truth without carrying the responsibility to heal them. In the quiet that follows, you realize something deeply beautiful. When everything is spoken in the right way, there is nothing left that needs to be held in silence. Your heart becomes lighter, not because you forgot everything, but because everything has been placed where it belongs. And that lightness creates a new kind of space, a space where you no longer love from lack, where you no longer connect from fear of loss. You begin to open your heart by choice, not by habit. That space feels clear, honest. It allows you to look forward with a different gaze, where love is no longer a problem to solve, but an experience to step into when both people are standing steady. And as you move ahead, no longer carrying old weight, each step becomes more grounded, as if you can feel yourself moving closer to a new kind of connection. A place where balance is no longer something you have to force, but something that naturally appears when two people meet at the right time, in the right rhythm, as the right versions of themselves. Standing in that space, a very different feeling begins to surface. No longer the nervous tension mixed with fear from before, but a quiet sense of reassurance, like setting your luggage down after a long journey and realizing you no longer have to go anywhere to prove anything. Your heart is no longer hungry to be filled. It simply opens, wide enough to receive, without losing the boundaries shaped by everything you have lived through. You begin to recognize that you are ready to love in a completely new way, not to heal old emptiness, not to feel more worthy, but to share a life that is already becoming steady. You know clearly what brings you peace, what makes you hesitate, and what is no longer negotiable. That clarity does not close you off. On the contrary, it makes you warmer, because you no longer have to navigate relationships through fear of being left or misunderstood. The person who enters your life now may arrive very gently, not through grand promises, not through overwhelming emotion, just a presence solid enough that you do not need to stay guarded. Someone who listens without requiring long explanations. Someone with their own rhythm, yet willing to adjust, to walk beside you, not asking you to shrink yourself to fit. And most importantly, when you are with them, you do not have to become a better version of yourself in order to be loved. You are loved as you are. If this is a continuation of an old connection, it no longer carries the shape of the past. Neither of you stands in a place of open wounds or blind expectations anymore. What once caused pain has become understanding, not an open scar. If you step back in, you do so with maturity, with honest conversations, with the ability to ask real questions and listen to real answers without turning away. And if this is someone entirely new, you do not rush to label it or place the future on their shoulders. You allow things to unfold at a natural pace, slow enough to feel, real enough to trust. The most beautiful thing about this phase is that you no longer compromise for half measures. You no longer accept relationships that leave you guessing. You no longer soothe yourself with the idea that things will change if you just try harder. You understand now that lasting love does not require constant drama. It requires consistency, respect in the smallest details, a sense of safety that allows each person to be fully themselves without fear of hurting the other, simply by being real. Within that calm, you begin to imagine a future that no longer feels distant, not a future built on fantasy, but one rooted in everyday truth. Quiet evenings, conversations without hiding, disagreements resolved through listening instead of silence. You realize you are no longer searching for someone to complete you. You are looking for someone to walk alongside you, two whole people, each complete in their own way, yet willing to reach for one another's hand when it matters. And when love is built on a foundation like this, it does not take away your freedom. It expands it. You feel softer, yet more grounded. You give without fear of running out. You receive without guilt. This connection, whether it is still in its earliest stages or already beginning to take shape, carries a sense of longevity. Not because it promises forever, but because it is built on truth, on choice, and on the full presence of two people mature enough to love without losing themselves. When love is built on a foundation like this, you no longer need to ask yourself whether you are on the right path or the wrong one. A very quiet feeling appears, not loud but clear enough to guide you. It feels like standing at a crossroads in the early morning fog. You cannot see the entire road ahead, yet you know, with surprising certainty, which direction makes your heart feel lighter when you imagine taking it. Libra has spent a long time weighing everything, letting outside opinions slip into deeply personal decisions. You became used to listening to everyone else before listening to yourself. But now, something inside you is waking up, not to argue, not to defend itself, but to remind you that every true choice always begins from within. In the days very close ahead, you may find yourself facing a decision that cannot be avoided. It may not look dramatic. It may not feel monumental. It could be as simple as saying yes or no, taking one step forward or choosing to pause. Yet you will feel its weight not through logic alone, but through intuition. You may notice you no longer have the patience to stretch uncertainty any further. No longer the desire to delay with explanations that sound reasonable, but feel hollow. Because deep inside, you understand something clearly now. Not choosing is also a choice. And prolonged hesitation only pulls you farther away from your own truth. Your intuition does not arrive as a loud calling. It comes quietly, through very human sensations. A slight tightening in your chest when something is not right. A sense of openness, a gentle ease when you imagine a different direction. You may feel unexpectedly calm when releasing something that once caused you anxiety. You may notice your heartbeat slow when picturing a decision you once feared. These signals do not need to be analyzed endlessly. They do not ask you to explain yourself to anyone. They only ask to be respected. Libra is now mature enough to understand that the right moment is not when everything is perfect, but when you no longer wish to betray your own feelings. Acting at the right time is not rushing, and it is not waiting for everyone to agree. It is the moment you feel the inner pull and choose to trust it, even when no one else can see the full picture. When you do, the road ahead may not immediately become easier, but it becomes right in a way that fits your rhythm, your pace, your life. There may be opposing opinions. There may be advice offered with good intentions that simply does not touch what you are feeling inside. You do not need to fight it. You only need to set it aside long enough to hear your own voice. Wisdom is not about having every answer. It is about knowing who you need to listen to in this moment. And for Libra, this moment belongs to intuition. The intuition sharpened by years of observing, understanding, and holding balance for things that were never truly yours to carry. When you make your choice, you may be surprised by the relief that follows. As if an invisible weight has been gently set down. You breathe deeper. You move more slowly, yet with greater certainty. You no longer keep looking back to see if someone is disappointed. You only know this. You did not disappoint yourself. And in that steadiness, the world begins to respond differently. The right doors start to appear. What no longer fits, naturally, falls away. This choice does not separate you from who you once were. It gathers everything you have lived, everything you have loved, everything you have learned, and places it into a new order. An order where you no longer strain to keep everything balanced, because balance has already begun from within. As you walk forward, guided by your intuition, one step at a time, very naturally, you begin to realize that life is not urging you to run. It is simply opening a different rhythm. A rhythm where you are allowed to trust, to choose, and to receive what arrives after you have found the courage to say yes to yourself. And when you have come this far, slowly, deeply, and honestly, you begin to feel it clearly. A cycle has truly come to an end. No announcement is needed. No ritual is required. Just one ordinary morning when you wake up and realize you are no longer carrying that familiar heaviness with you. The things that once demanded so much effort to hold together now leave on their own. Not because you gave up, but because you have grown full enough to no longer cling. Libra steps into a new phase with a different state of being, no longer waiting for validation, no longer asking permission to live truthfully. You begin to receive what you deserve in very human ways. It may come as appreciation from others when they finally see your value more clearly because you are no longer hiding it. It may come as peace when you make a choice without guilt. It may come as the feeling of living at the right pace, within your real capacity, aligned with what you truly want, without needing to explain yourself. These things do not arrive all at once, but they arrive steadily, like soft rain soaking into the ground, nourishing a garden that has been patiently cared for over many years. Living in alignment with your true values is no longer a vague idea. It becomes something very practical, very real, in everyday life. You say no when no is needed. You say yes when you truly mean it. You give your time to what nourishes you, instead of what only keeps you busy. You stop shrinking yourself to fit old molds. You understand now that balance does not come from making everyone comfortable, but from not betraying yourself. And something interesting happens when you stand firmly in that place. The world begins to adjust as well. Relationships become clearer. The ones that are real stay. What no longer fits naturally moves away without force. Your family, in its own quiet way, also begins to shift. Not every issue disappears, but the atmosphere softens. There is more listening and conversations. Old misunderstandings are revisited with different eyes. You stop trying to carry everything alone. You allow yourself to lean when needed, and that softening creates a new sense of harmony. Not perfect, but real. Your living space reflects this change as well. More orderly, more warm, with room for light and room to breathe. A place to return to, not just with your body, but with your soul. Your inner life, after years of holding balance for others, is finally placed where it belongs. You no longer need to prove that you are okay. You allow yourself to be tired when you are tired, to be joyful when you are joyful, to be silent when silence is needed. This peace is not the absence of challenges. It is the ability to move through them without losing yourself. You realize you have gone far enough to understand the value of simplicity, of small joys, of evenings with no plans, only full presence. And when you look back at the path you have walked, you see the meaning in every stretch of the road. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was meaningless. Every time you endured, every time you waited, every time you chose kindness, even when it was not returned, all of it shaped a heart strong enough to live truthfully. Not a life lived just enough to stay safe, but a life lived in alignment with what you know is real. The final message does not need to be spoken loudly. It has been there for a long time, waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear it. You did not come here to live a life that is merely sufficient, to please others, to avoid waves. You came here to live a life that is true, a life where every choice reflects your real values, where every step carries the weight of self-respect and love. And when you allow yourself to receive that, very naturally, life begins to return to you what you have been quietly planting for so long, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily and deservedly.